friends. Hey, welcome back to the Faith Driven Leader podcast. I'm so glad you're here. Today's conversation it's a great one. It's really special for me because we have Chuck Mingo back on the show. Chuck was, I think, my third guest on the Faith Driven Leader podcast, and you're just going to love this conversation. Chuck is a teaching pastor at Crossroads Church here in Cincinnati, and if you've been around Crossroads for any length of time, you've probably heard his teaching. He's kind of known as the people's pastor, and everybody loves when Chuck teaches. The last time that Chuck and I talked, which was about 2.5 years ago, his vocational journey had taken him outside the local church and into a nonprofit that he was leading. And now he's back in the local church as a teaching pastor. So of course I had lots of questions and wanted to talk a little bit about that career journey. Chuck has actually navigated a lot of significant transitions in his career, from the marketplace to ministry to nonprofit leadership, as I mentioned, and now back to the local church. And what I really appreciate about Chuck is he doesn't tell these stories with like a bunch of polish and certainty. He tells them with humility and with honesty and with a bit of humor and with a deep trust in God's faithfulness across all those seasons. In this conversation, we're going to talk about the difference between calling and season and why confusing the two can keep us stuck. We're going to explore a lot about discerning how we make these types of career transitions with God. And we talk about some of the things that get in the way of that discernment. And we're going to talk a little bit about how we can live out our calling in ministry or in the marketplace, or maybe sometimes both, and how our impact isn't limited by our job title or role inside the church. This is a great conversation. It's a fun conversation. I think you're really going to enjoy it, and I'm not going to wait any longer. Let's dive right in. All right. Well, Chuck Mingo, you are back for round 2 on the Faith Driven Leader. Do you have any idea what you're in for today?
You know what? I never do. Although I will tell your listeners what I told you, which is I feel like the subtitle should be "The Leader Gets to Be on the Couch," because the questions that you asked in just our pre-thinking about this are so profound, and they've really got me thinking. So I'm thinking I'm going to learn something today. I hope some other people learn today as well.
I'm sure we're all going to learn something today. I feel like in this season for probably the past 6 months or something, I've been really focused on career specific stuff, like career transitions and things like that. And you've come to mind several times because I know you've been through some interesting career transitions. So I'm so excited for people to hear more about your journey and how the Lord has led you through that and what some of the things are that you're learning and all of those things. And like you said, I know when I answer questions like that, I'm always like, oh, did I just say that? Wow.
Exactly.
That reveals something interesting about me.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I'm excited to learn more and hear more of what God's been doing in your life the past couple of years. Well, let's get started. You've had some pretty significant career shifts, even since the last time you and I talked, which was like 2.5 years ago. You've had some big shifts. When you look back on those, tell us a little bit about some of those big
I
picture. Give us
will.
the arc of that. But when you look back at them, what can you see more clearly now that maybe you couldn't when you were in the middle of that transition, especially kind of if you think about the last 3 years, where I think there's been a little bit of like,
There
oh
have been,
boy,
yes.
what are we doing, Lord?
What's going on? What's going on? Yeah. So just to give some context. So, graduated from college, had an internship with Procter and Gamble. And, in my mind, I'm like, hey, this is a great company. And at that time, it was basically like, hey, you work here for 30 years, you're set. Right. And I
Oh
planned
yeah,
on
I was
working there
there
for
too.
30 years and
Yep,
being
yep.
set. And, but God had a different plan. I got promoted. That's what moved me to Cincinnati. And then I found this church, Crossroads Church, and all of a sudden just began to feel really called to what God was doing there. Now, I had already had kind of a reckoning around a call to ministry, you could say, before
Mhm.
I left Philadelphia, which is where I'm from. But when I got this opportunity with P&G, I kind of set that behind me. But God had different plans. And so over the next really 7 years or so, God prepared my heart to take a leap from corporate world into church world, becoming a pastor. And, when I started at Crossroads, Crossroads was meeting in a school. When I started on staff, we had one site. Now Crossroads has 9 sites, and it's just grown like
Yes.
crazy. And, you
Yeah.
know, little did I know that, that's all that God had in store. And, and there's even more he has in store. But
Yeah.
after 10 years of really feeling connected and faithful ministry at Crossroads, God put a different calling on my heart. At the time, it didn't call for me to leave the role at Crossroads, but I launched a ministry called Undivided that is still in
Yeah.
existence and really focused on really racial healing and justice work around the country. And, in 2020, in the reckoning that I think our whole country had, as you know, I
Yeah.
felt the call to kind of take this thing that had been a ministry at Crossroads and really launch it as a nonprofit, and became the first executive director. And you know me well enough to know I didn't want any of that. That was not. I
Yeah.
did not have on my bingo card, my career bingo card, start a nonprofit.
Yeah.
That was not on my bingo card. But did that, and then, like you said, in 2024, after leading that for 4 years, and just the turmoil and challenge of talking about race in those years, but also seeing the fruit of what God was doing, I really just started wrestling with, am I in the right seat? Even for the work
Mm,
that God has called me to. And,
yeah.
and we'll get into some of this probably later, but I think the thing that I was realizing is um, my unique gifts and my heart is really around pastoring people.
Mm,
And there were things about being an executive director that I was able to flourish and shine in, and there were things about it that just didn't really fit me, and ways I think I was getting in the way of the organization.
yeah.
And there
Yeah.
was a humbling process to come to those realizations, and then not knowing what was next, but realizing that I had seen my co-founder Troy, who's now the executive director, really stepping in, and I'm like, dude, I think you should be in this role.
Yeah.
And I think as we started to kind of come to that realization, it required me to trust God again, and eventually got an opportunity to come back into Crossroads, and that's where I am now. I have a role there, and we could talk more about that. But
Yeah.
it really has been this kind of progression through all of these different phases of my quote unquote career, if you will. And you asked the question, what have I learned as I look back on those things?
Yeah.
And I think the number one thing that I have to say, and it sounds so trite, but I'm telling you, it's just the thing that comes to mind. God doesn't waste anything.
Mm,
He doesn't
yeah.
waste anything. And I think it's easy to feel like it's being wasted, especially when you feel like you're off track.
Yeah.
And in all of those moves, there was a moment before it where I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I thought
Yeah.
I knew what the path was. I thought it was 30 years at P&G. Now you're telling me maybe it's not. And I'm
Yeah.
decreasingly enjoying this work that I thought I was going to be doing for 30 years. God, I thought I was just going to be a pastor in church. Like, I'm good with that. Like, why do you have me going and doing this nonprofit? Now you got me in this nonprofit. What do you mean? What do you mean I'm not going to stay? And I think for me, it's like he's wasted nothing. He's wasted
Yeah.
nothing. So I think that's one of the things that I look back and also can see. And the other one, it kind of gets to maybe a question that we talked about earlier. I have had to learn that there is a difference between calling and seasons.
Say more about that.
So,
Yeah.
yeah,
Calling
so
versus
like
seasons. Yeah.
calling versus season. So, here's what I know is part of my calling. Part of my calling is to be a bridge builder. I
Mm.
jokingly say if I move to Mars, and as soon as I learned the language, I would figure out which Martians feel marginalized and which don't, and I'd be trying to bring them together.
I think that resonates with what I know about you. That makes total sense to me.
That's part of my calling. It's part of
Yeah.
my wiring, the
Yeah.
way that God has gifted me, and just the way that the thing that brings my heart to life.
Yeah.
But there are different seasons in a calling.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm learning is that calling, that being a bridger, that can happen in a local church context. That could happen in a corporate context. That happens in my family and my extended
Yeah.
family. And so I've had to learn from a career standpoint that there's different seasons. And so I hope that the more that I experience these career transitions, I'm going into the next season with clarity around my calling, if you want to think
Yeah.
about it like a closed fist on my calling, but an open hand about the season, because
Yeah.
I don't know that the season's going to last forever.
Right.
And what I will say, another thing I've learned is God's been faithful. He's been faithful through
Mm.
these transitions in my life to continue to give me opportunities to do meaningful work. And at the end
Yeah.
of the day, if you can do work that you wake up every day and say, hey, I feel like I'm making a difference, you're winning. And there's a
Yeah.
lot of work that fits that
Yeah.
category. So,
Yeah.
mhm.
I love that perspective. And I think it's interesting from a like seasons sometimes are specific jobs.
Correct.
Sometimes people call seasons assignments,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
But I
Hmm.
like that distinction between your calling in the particular season you're in. I'm curious,
Yeah.
I didn't prep you for this question, but
Mhm.
how did you figure out what your calling was? I know lots of people ask
Mm.
that question. How
Yeah.
did you get to that, and when did you get to that?
Yeah. Well, let me honestly say, when I get that answered, I'll let you know.
Still not completely sure.
Still not completely sure. It
Yeah,
is it
yeah,
is my best guess, but I will tell
yeah.
you some things that I think have been helpful for me. One is I believe callings are best confirmed in community.
Mm,
So
that's
when I think
good.
about my calling, yes, there have been times when God has, I've been reading scripture and I'm like, oh man, yeah, I know this is part of what makes me come alive. Yes, that's happened. And I absolutely
Mhm.
believe that calling comes from God. And you know, God has made some things clear to me, but
Yeah,
God uses the people around you. He
that's so
really
good.
does.
Yeah,
And it's one of the benefits of having people. I love your word assignment too, calling an assignment. It's one of the benefits of having a community that transcends your assignment
yeah,
is that you have people who've been in your life for different assignments and they help you make the connection. Like,
yeah,
hey, whether you were doing this or doing that, this was common. It
yeah,
was the same thing. And so I think for me, that's been super helpful. Everything from, my wife to mentors in my life. Those are the people who have really helped me feel more confident that, okay, I do think I have this calling
yeah,
because people who know me outside of the context of any particular role I've had are saying, yeah, we see this as a through line in your life. So that's a clue. That's something to
yeah,
think about as you're trying to wrestle with. And I'm sure some of your listeners are trying to wrestling with my calling. It's like, yeah, like go to
yeah,
the people who know you well. What are the things that they see in you?
yeah,
Um, we were talking about hiring at Crossroads, and Darren, our executive pastor, says this, and I think it's often true. He's like, a lot of times if there's a role that's been open for a period of time, and you're like, man, we just can't find the right person. Lots of times they're right under your nose.
yeah. Isn't that
It's
true?
it's the person who is doing this role but has the potential to go to the next role. They're already in your organization. They
Yeah,
might already be on the team, but you're just not
right.
thinking about them in that way. And I think calling is like that. I think
Yeah,
sometimes we're like, well, where's my calling? And we're like, we're out here with it when all of a sudden it's like, oh man, what's the thing that I've been doing consistently that seems to be bearing fruit? And
yeah.
actually it kind of brings me to life. Maybe that's closer to my calling than I think.
Yeah, I love that you just said that. But, one of the things that I've reflected on a lot of my own career, and I've seen it in so many other people's careers, is we think, especially amongst Christians, I think we feel this burden that we've got to like figure out, the story of the talents and what are the talents that the
Yes.
Lord has given. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out. I got to figure it out. And I don't actually think it's that complicated. I
Yeah.
really think, he wires us and gifts us with certain things that come natural to us that other people are going to notice. But I love what you said at
That's
the
right.
end about this thing brings me life.
Yeah.
Because you know what, Chuck? I feel like the thing that people miss is that he plants these desires in our hearts.
Yeah.
And even when you talk about being a bridge
Yes.
and pastoring people, you can see your countenance changes. Like he wires us to be lit up. You said the thing that lights me up.
Lit
It's
up.
like,
Yeah.
man, how do we learn how to pay attention to that and
Yes.
recognize that it's part of our calling? And yes, it can be expressed in different seasons or different
Sure.
assignments, right?
Hmm.
But I mean, for you, when you think back,
Yeah.
or maybe even forward, and maybe not even just for you, but people you've mentored and led, what do you think are the things that get in the way? 'Cause I have some theories, but what do you think are the things that get in the way of people
Yeah.
really leaning into that thing that they're gifted and that they
Yeah.
want to do, the thing they want to do?
Yeah.
Why don't we
Right.
why don't we
Right.
do it? Why don't we
Why
do
don't we do the
it?
thing we want to do? Right.
Yes.
Yeah, it's a great question. And honestly, I reflect on my own experience, and I think fear is a
Yeah.
huge, huge barrier. And fear comes in different forms, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might say, well, okay, if the thing that lights you up is performing music, you might be like, well, how am I going to make a living doing that? Like that's a maybe
Right.
more pragmatic fear.
Yeah.
But I think fear shows up in lots of different places. I think we have
Yeah.
fear of failure,
Yep.
where we're like, I just don't want to put myself out there because I'm afraid I'll fail.
Yeah.
Um, we can have fear of success. I think
Yeah.
sometimes we have fear of success and say, well, what if
Yeah.
this does work? Then
Right.
what? You
Right.
know? So I think fear is one of the barriers. And I also think you said it earlier, and I think it's so true. Um, I love how do I put this? I love the solidity in my mind of
Yeah.
biblical truth,
Yes.
that God is the same yesterday, today, forever. I love that. I do think as Christians, we can have a rigidity that goes
Mm.
beyond the biblical
Oh,
solidity. Does
that's
that make
like
sense?
solidity versus rigidity. That's a really
Yeah.
interesting
And I
distinction. I'm writing
think,
that one down.
yeah, because I think like we can be so rigid
Yeah.
in how we think this has to play out that we miss the opportunity. So for instance, I mean, I think sometimes people will say, well, what if you volunteer in the thing you love doing? What
Yeah.
opportunities could that open up for you? And I don't think we think about those. It's like, well, if it's not a job today, then
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I think that's some of it, is just those are some of the barriers. And then I do think and I'll put this out there, I think there's a healthy barrier um, that gets in the way. And it's
Yeah.
this. I do think, for me, I think about my own life, lack of maturity is a
Yeah.
barrier.
You're
There are
right.
some things, and I could not have handled
Yes. You're right.
when I
I
was
that
25,
resonates. That resonates.
right? That
Yeah.
I can handle differently now that I'm almost 50. And it's not only age, but I do think that's another one that's like, sometimes we do need to think about, maybe God is putting a governor on your pace because he's
Mm.
developing your character to be able to match where he's taking
Wow.
you. And so that's another thing when I look back at my life, is like, I think about, I'm sure you've had these moments too. I think about the moments when I have literally yelled at God, why aren't you doing this for me? Why aren't
Yes.
you,
Yes.
you name it, right? Like, why am I not married yet? Why haven't I had kids? Whatever,
Yeah.
anything.
Whatever it is.
And
Yeah.
and I look back now and I'm like, God, if you had given me what I asked for the moment I asked for it, oh my goodness, that would have been the most unkind thing you could do.
Yes. Yeah.
And so for some of
Yeah.
us, we just need to realize, like, what feels like God saying no
Yeah.
is really a loving dad saying, hey, hey, just not yet.
Not yet.
I
Not
got
yet.
you.
Yeah.
I got you. We're going there.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, but not yet. And
Yeah.
I can look back now and see where it was God's grace to keep
Yeah.
some opportunities off my plate,
Yeah.
because I would have squandered them terribly.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah, I love that. There's another one I was thinking about too, and I'm curious if it played a role for you, especially in
Mm-hmm.
the undivided part of your journey. I
Mm-hmm.
think sometimes we believe we have to impress the world.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, part of my journey was getting to that pinnacle CEO of this co-CEO of
Yes.
this company that I co-founded. And at some point, I remember one day waking up going, this is not the right job for me.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody thinks I should do it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and my LinkedIn profile, if you did a projection on it, would show that I should
Mm-hmm.
take another bigger CEO role afterwards. And the stepping back
Mm-hmm.
is hard because society generally
Yes.
says that's not the direction our career should go. Our career should go up and to the right
That's right. That's
all the
right.
time. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, how much did that play a role for you
Oh,
in the?
absolutely.
Tell us about
I'll
that a
give you
little bit.
yeah, I'll give you two examples. One is a current example, but I'll go back to
Okay.
an earlier example. The earlier example is, and you know this because you were P&G, or so, I was on what P&G, I don't know if they call it that now, but I was on the fast track, right? And
The
there's a
the
whole
development list. I
I
was
was
on
on
it
the
too.
development
Oh
list. I
yeah.
was on the
Oh
development
yeah.
list, right? And
Yeah.
part of that is they begin to cast vision for, like, hey,
Oh
here's
yeah.
here's where we see you headed, right?
Yeah.
And I actually did something, and I know people, like, when I did, they were like, "You're crazy. You did what?" Like, I actually asked to not be on that list anymore
Did you? That
right
was very
before I
mature. I mean,
left.
what, you were
Right
in your
before I
20s?
left. Yeah, I was. I was in my 20s.
Wow.
And
That's
I was like,
impressive.
I'm not, but here's how I got there. What I realized is the anxiety
Yeah.
that I was living with and the lack of joy that I
Mm.
was experiencing, it was literally taking a physical toll on me.
Yeah.
And as I projected out to the next roles, what I saw for me, this is Chuck's decision. I'm not
Yes.
against the development list, and I'm glad I got friends who are on it and who are super successful.
Yes. Yes.
For me, the next opportunities would have meant much more travel,
Yes.
much more way against my more time away from my family, and it would not have been healthy for me. It would not
Yeah.
have.
Yeah.
And I realized that a role that I had had previously, two roles back, was the role that I loved doing, the role that I
Yeah.
would like lose track of time doing because I love doing it so much. And surprise, surprise, it was developing people, it was being a trainer. And I
Right.
actually was like, hey, can I go back to that work? Now, I say that because I do think like, yeah, you have to ask yourself what brings you to life, not what other
Yeah.
people have for you.
Yeah.
Now, here's the one that's more recent for me.
Okay.
Coming back to
Yeah.
Crossroads for me was like, I don't want to travel as much as I'm traveling
Mm.
as an executive director. And I love the small,
Yeah.
which sounds strange, because you're like,
At
okay, when I
Crossroads. Crossroads is a big
when
place
I
too.
preach, I
Yeah.
preach to, I don't know,
A
not
lot of
everybody's a
people.
crossroader, but like it's a lot of people, right? Church of
Yeah.
50 plus thousand people engaging, in some way.
Yeah.
And in the room that I'm in, multiple thousands of people per service, right? So,
Yeah.
um, but I love pastoring in
Yeah.
smaller contexts. Give me
Yeah.
30 people to do a Bible study with, and
Yeah.
I love it.
Yeah.
And I get to do more of that now than I had been doing. And I love it. And so I think part of it for me is realizing once again, I got to take myself off of the quote unquote fast track
Yeah.
and be in the places where I can add value, but also the places that give me the margin to have a life that kind of works.
Yeah.
And I'm okay with that decision now in a way that I probably wasn't okay with that decision even 5 years ago.
Yeah. I think there is I mean, it almost ties back to what you're saying before about a spiritual maturity and even just a chronological maturity.
Yeah,
My experience
that's
is
real.
when you
Hmm.
hit close to like late 40s, early 50s, you do have this moment of saying, wait a minute, I've been chasing something,
Yeah, yeah.
or maybe I've been being chased,
Hmm.
and I don't want to do this anymore. I want to
Yeah,
do what brings me life.
yeah.
And gosh, how do I make the most of how God has wired me? And what would
Hmm.
it look like if I did the thing that He made me to do?
Yes,
What would
yes,
how would the world look different, and how would I look different, and how would the
yes.
impact be different? And it becomes less about the money and the prestige and the fame and the
Hmm.
title and the name, and more
Yeah,
about I'm doing what I'm here to do. I mean, to me, that I
yeah,
use the word alignment to talk about that. Like,
yeah. That's
we
good.
want to be in work
That's
that is
good.
aligned with how God created us, essentially.
Hmm. Hmm.
And it's so fun to hear people's journeys.
Yeah,
And I love yours because it's a little bit of a
it totally
wow,
is.
which I've lived that too, which is why I'm
Hmm.
like, oh, I've got to talk to Chuck about this. I've got to talk to Chuck about this. So I'm sure I'm thinking back to probably both that Procter decision as well as the one stepping back from Undivided, where there were probably some people in your life who they didn't think that was a good decision, or they kind of
Yeah.
misunderstood that, or thought, why are you
Hmm.
doing that, Chuck? That's crazy.
Hmm.
How
Hmm.
did you navigate through that? What role did your faith play in that as you navigated through some of
Yeah,
that uncertainty and people not maybe agreeing with what you were doing?
yeah, yeah. Such a good question. And when I was thinking about this question, it made me think about something that I love in the scriptures. You know, I believe Jesus had a daily time with God. I believe that, even though the Bible doesn't necessarily say now Jesus had a daily time with God. There's the place in
Yeah.
Mark 1 where it says he got off early in the morning and he went and had, pray. So I think he
Yeah.
did that daily. But here's what I do see as a very clear pattern in the Bible, and I think there's something to it. I do see that at times of transition, Jesus pulled away from
Mm,
people
yeah.
and he got together with the Father for solitude.
Yeah.
We see that after John the Baptist dies,
Yeah.
which was Jesus' cousin. And I think that part of that was grieving. And I
Hmm.
think part of that was because on the other side of John the Baptist dying, it was kind of like, okay, now he's moving into the spotlight, right? So
Yeah.
we see that. We see him do it again when he's about to decide on the 12 out of all the people who are following him who are going to be his close community. We see him pull away. And then it says, and as he came back, he had selected 12 to be apostles. We see it again the night before he dies on the cross when
Yes.
he's at the
Yeah.
Garden of Gethsemane and he pulls away to have that time with God. And so I think one of the things that has been a practice of mine that helps me in those moments of transition is pulling away
Yeah.
and giving myself some silence and some solitude. Sometimes that's been a 24-hour thing. Sometimes it's been a 2 hour thing. Sometimes it's been a 1 week thing. And because you got to do
Yeah.
what works for your life. But I think for me, whenever I'm hearing that, like, what are you doing? This doesn't make any sense. There comes a time when the only confidence you can have is that you have pulled away. And
Yeah.
as best as I can understand it, this feels like the direction my father is giving me for what's
Yeah.
next. And
Yeah.
I would say I had to learn that because I'm an extrovert and I drive my wife crazy because like I will make a million different decisions in my head before I land on the one real decision.
Yeah.
And she's an introvert. And she said to me, Chuck, I need you to go do all of that away from me. And then when you land where you land, we'll
And
start
come
there
back
and
and
we
tell
can
me.
talk.
Yeah.
Come back and
Yeah.
tell me. And so I think I would do that with all kinds of career decisions too, where I'm like, oh, I got to talk to this person. I got to talk to this person. I want to talk to this person. And you get all of these different perspectives, all good
Yeah.
perspectives, but it would just be confusing. It just became like a soup of all these different perspectives. And I think the thing I've had to learn for me is when it's a heavy decision like that, yes, there are some trusted voices that are speaking into that decision. I'm not making and I'm not like Moses coming down off the mountain when it's a significant decision. But I have learned start first with going to the mountain. Start first
With the Lord.
with pulling away. And then that way, when I'm coming to my trusted mentors, I'm not saying, hey, what do you think? I'm saying, here's what I think I'm hearing from God. Now
Yeah.
help me test this.
Yeah.
That's been a better way for me to make those kinds of decisions, especially when there's pushback, because I'm a people pleaser and I still
Yeah.
struggle with that. I want to
Yeah.
make everybody happy. So if one person says this and one person says that, I'm trying to do both. And it's like, no, there are times when it's like, hey, I know that you have good pushback here. I hear your perspective. And I also feel like I'm willing to assume the risk and go
Yeah.
in this direction because I feel like it's what God's called me to.
Yeah. I love that, Chuck. I have found this is a little tip to the next book. The next book is going to be about what I'm calling the power pause,
Mm,
which is what does it look like to take that time with the Lord? How do you do it? How do you plan for it? Because sometimes you
yes,
need longer than a couple hours.
you do. Mm-hmm.
You need a sabbatical or something. What does
Yes.
it look like to plan for that and then do it? And how do you do it? And then how do you kind of re matriculate back into the world?
Yes.
But
Mm-hmm.
I think the other thing that's really interesting about that is you have to like know yourself well enough to know, am I hearing from the Lord yet, or is there still just a bunch of noise in my head?
That's right.
And how to
That's right.
discern those things. What have you learned about how to discern?
Mm,
Because you even said, I get input from lots of people,
yeah. Mm-hmm.
and discerning between that and what the Lord is telling you.
Yeah.
What have been some practices that we could learn from you that
Yeah.
help you do that?
Yeah. One of them is a practice that it involves another person, but I have a
Yeah.
spiritual director. I have a spiritual
Yes.
director, and I have found that to be really, really helpful for discernment. And here's what I love about the spiritual director that I have. When we get together, it's a predictable rhythm. So
Yeah.
once a month we get together, and every 3 months we're in person, because she lives in Indiana. But when we get together, we start our time by praying through, it's called the Liturgy of the Hours. So there's several prayers
Mm,
that people in the church would pray throughout the day. And when
okay.
we first come together, we start by just anchoring ourselves in whatever is the arc and the flow of what the church is praying that day.
Yeah.
And I
Okay.
find that practice has a way of cutting out it takes out bias, right?
Yeah.
Because it is what it is. The reading is the reading. And, if
Yeah.
we're in the morning, it's the morning reading. If I meet with her in the afternoon, it's the afternoon reading. And it just is what it is. And I find that to be such a great leveler.
Yeah.
And then after that, we enter into a moment of silence, a couple minutes of silence that I get to pull us out of. So if I need more time on that, I can be in silence and
Yeah.
she's happy to be in silence for however long it takes. And then the question that she asked me to start our time is always the same question, which is, what would be helpful to talk about today, and how is it with your soul?
Mm, that's good.
And so that practice and rhythm has a way, and then she listens. She helps me listen. She's
Yeah.
listening with me to God, listening with God with me,
Yes.
listening to God with me, listening to God with me. That's what I was saying.
I get what you're
Um,
saying.
and that practice has been really helpful, Anne, because
Yeah.
there's a cadence to it. There's a trust to it.
Yeah.
There's a language to it.
Yeah.
And I have found that to be a very helpful practice for discernment for me.
Yeah.
So that's one is
Okay.
spiritual direction. I would say another discernment practice is I really believe deeply in the power of sleeping on it.
Yes, me too.
I really, really
Yeah.
do. And in fact, one of the things that I've tried to do is delay decisions. Even like, I get asked to do podcasts. I get asked to
Yeah.
to speak in different places.
Yeah.
And, there was a time when I was like, I'll say yes to almost anything because I'm trying to get out there, get my work message
Yeah.
out there, or
Yeah.
whatever. Now, what I try to do is never say yes without a week to pray and discern. And I try on either Saturday or Sunday to have a period in my, because I have a little bit more extended time to kind of,
Sure.
pray and process and just, hang with God. I try to bring those decisions into that period of time for discernment.
Yeah.
And just the delay alone really is clarifying because there's
Yeah.
so many things that sound amazing in the moment. And when I just
Yes.
think about it for 2 minutes, you're just like, I can't do that.
Yeah.
Either because
Yeah.
this is another tax on my family or whatever. So like that's one of the things. Here's one that also helps me discern. I really have I've had to put boundaries on my travel
Yeah.
because I'll say yes to too much and then I'm away from home too much.
Yeah.
And so I've given myself a budget of 14 days away a quarter.
Okay.
And that forces me to make decisions
It does. It really does.
around, okay, if I'm going to this thing
Yeah.
and I'm over budget, something has to change. I literally just had this today where I had a decision and I was going to do a thing, and it's very clear God is calling me to do this other thing that's going to require
Yeah.
me. It's not a long trip. It's going to require, and so I had to go back and say, hey, I'm going to pull out of this first thing I committed to because I didn't need to give them all the reasons, but for me, it's
Yeah.
like I understand what God's calling me to do from a kingdom standpoint, from
Yeah.
a crossroads standpoint, and so I'm going this direction. So I have found those practices to really help me with discernment. They
I
really,
love
really do.
that. I love those. It's almost that last one, that travel one reminds me of, creating a little bit of a filter for yourself
Yes.
of these are the
Yes.
things that I know God has called me to. Sometimes like
Mm-hmm.
for, there's always talk at the beginning of the year. Everybody's, what's your word for the year? What's your focus for the
Mm-hmm.
year? And for me, that's actually been a very helpful filter
Mm-hmm.
in the years of,
Mm-hmm.
okay, well, the Lord said this year, my focus is alignment and focus. Funny that my
Okay.
focus is focus, but it's
Okay.
already been helpful as a filter
Yeah.
to help me discern in those moments. And you didn't mention this, but I would be surprised if you didn't do a practice like this too. The other one that I use sometimes is I just call it the dump. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
get my journal out
Mm-hmm.
and I literally just
Mm-hmm.
write down
Oh yeah.
everything that's coming to my mind. And it's almost like the
Yes.
practice of getting it out clears my
Absolutely.
mind enough
Mm-hmm.
to quiet down the noise so that I can hear because he's not going to shout. He
He's not.
doesn't shout,
He's not. He doesn't shout. He
and
doesn't shout.
especially on the big stuff, he doesn't
Yeah,
shout. Like I think
for
he really
sure.
wants us in a posture of listening
Yeah.
and not thinking about all the other stuff so that we can hear him. And like I said, I think
Mm-hmm.
especially the big ones, because especially if it's one where it's like, everybody else isn't going to understand it.
That's right. That's
You got to
right.
have a lot of
You got to have a peace.
conviction
You got to have a
and
peace
peace
about it,
that
right?
you're doing what he's calling you to do. Yeah. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So,
Yeah,
so good.
journaling is a rhythm that is just so helpful
Yeah.
for so many things.
Yeah.
And yeah, I agree with you though. Just getting it out, and even the fact that writing it out. If you type your journal, that's great too. But like, I
Right.
find writing slows me down. I need
Yes.
every prompt to slow me down that I can get in my life.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I tend to live life sped up. I need
Yeah.
everything in my life that slows me down. I almost will tell you it is a grace from God
Yeah. It's so
because I
funny
need
because
it.
I remember thinking probably, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years ago, I thought, I'm at the point now where I can type faster than I write,
Yeah, yeah,
which generationally, the kids
that's
growing up
true.
can do that from the get-go, right? But I
Hmm.
remember thinking I should just journal by typing
Hmm.
because I can do
Hmm.
stream of conscious journaling like nobody's
Yeah,
business,
yeah.
right?
Hmm.
And at some point, the Lord was like, I want you to slow down.
Right,
I want you to
right.
have to spell out in cursive that word that will
Yes.
take you this, 4 syllables that will take
Hmm.
you a split second to type, but it's going to take you
Hmm.
4 or 5 seconds to write it out. I want you to slow
Yeah,
down.
yeah.
And it's been
Hmm.
very convicting
It is.
in a
It
good
is.
way, in a good
It
way, but
is.
yeah,
It is. Well, that's
yeah.
another thing too around discernment. Embodied practices is another thing that
Mm,
God has really just helped me see how important it is. So for me, I know that when I walk, walking
yeah.
is a way for me to express. Even if I'm not talking while I'm walking, I need the physical action of that. And there's
I
all
love
kinds of
that.
science around bilateral movement and how it sparks memory and all that. So yeah, isn't it interesting when science lines up with scripture? Surprise,
Right?
surprise.
How
But
about
but
that?
like for me, one of the things, because one of the emotions that I have struggled. This is a discernment thing for me. One of the emotions I still can struggle to express is anger.
Yeah.
And
Say
what
more about
I've
that.
realized, yeah, so what I've realized is, and I think this is true for many of us, when I am angry, underneath that anger is hurt
Yeah.
and grief. And I needed to grow, still need to grow in my ability to grieve well.
Yeah.
And so what I find is when I am angered by something, um, full transparency, there's lots going on in our world right now that makes me angry.
Yes.
I'll just leave it at that.
So true.
But
Yeah.
when I have those real strong feelings of anger, a walk can do wonders for me because
Mm.
a walk allows me to literally work out the
Yeah.
energy of the anger and get it to a point where I can get underneath the anger and say, what am I grieving right now?
Yeah. What am I sad
What am
about?
I
Yeah.
sad about right now?
Yeah.
And that it adds a potency to my prayer about that situation. But if I don't move and walk and process that, I absorb that anger and it comes out sideways.
Yeah.
It comes out at the wrong person.
Yep.
It comes out in the wrong way. It comes out the wrong moment. And so that's another tool that I would say is a discernment tool for me is I know there are certain things, either the weight of the decision or the sadness of a situation where I need to walk. And for me, I
Yeah.
love walking in the woods. So I need to find
Yeah.
a park with some trees and just walk. And
Yeah.
that's another tool I think for discernment that I'm finding.
I love that. I love that. That's so good. So good. Well, I want to kind of loop back to something that I think you have a unique perspective on, Chuck. And I I end up talking to a lot of young people,
Mhm.
probably because my kids are that age, and I'm thankful to be very, somewhat involved in like some of the work at Miami University with the
Mhm.
faith and entrepreneurship program there. And I get a chance to interact with a lot of young people. And one of the things that I find really interesting, and I find it interesting because this was not how I grew up thinking. Probably I grew up Catholic, and so to be in
Mhm.
ministry in Catholicism was a totally different type of commitment, right?
Yes.
It was
Mhm.
a celibacy commitment and not marrying, and I
Mhm.
knew I wanted to be married. So I never even had these thoughts. But I noticed a lot of young people, and maybe older people too, feel like the only way to do kingdom work in my career is if I'm in ministry.
Yeah.
And you've had a really interesting journey where you felt very called to ministry,
Mhm.
but also were able to practice your calling in seasons where you weren't in ministry. And it hasn't been
Yeah.
super linear. It's been
It's been, yeah,
anything but linear. So
anything but linear. Mhm.
talk to us a little bit about how you feel about the kind of calling expressed in ministry versus expressed
Yeah.
in marketplace, I guess is the two
Yeah.
buckets.
Yeah. I love that you asked that question. There's a book. It's a really good book. I don't know the author right offhand, and it's a shorter book, but it's called Kings and Priests. Have you ever heard of
Okay.
that book?
I've heard of this one. Yeah. I haven't
Yeah.
read it yet, but I've heard of it.
I love it. Here's a simple principle of the
Yep.
book. If you look at the Old Testament and the scriptures, what you'll see is there was really two seats of authority, if you want to call it that, in Israel. You
Yeah.
certainly had the priests, right? We're doing Bible through a year at Crossroads right now. We're right in
Yeah.
Exodus, so we're hearing about all the priestly
Yes.
garments and here's how the tabernacle needs to be, but all that stuff, right? And the priest was absolutely the go-between between God and the people, right? There's a spiritual authority with
Sure.
that. But now, even though God didn't necessarily want a king for Israel, he allowed kings for Israel. And once that was the case, the king carried a level of authority in the country as well. Like the
Yeah.
king was the authority to tax, if you will. The king was the authority to declare war. And the book's basic premise is in the church, what we've done is we've elevated the role of the priest,
Yeah.
pastor, and we de-elevated the role of the king. And
Interesting.
I believe this. I mean, I think you are you're. I guess you would be a queen, not a
Queen.
king, but
I know what you're
but I
saying.
believe that. And here's what I mean: you have an anointing
Mm,
around marketplace,
hmm.
and it is no less relevant to the kingdom, no less
Right.
important to the kingdom, no less in need of deep prayer and biblical formation and all the things than what I do as a pastor.
Yeah.
And so I think that one of the things, and particularly in this moment that we're in right now, one of the things that I'm excited about and want to see more of is I want to see the church continuing to elevate the role of our kings
Yeah.
and queens, if you will,
Yeah.
um, for a couple reasons. First, because I think there's been this worship of pastors that is so unhealthy,
Yeah.
and no one can live up to that. I'm not making excuses for anything that a pastor has done that they shouldn't have done. All I'm saying is there is a level of expectation put on this person simply because of a role that they have that we don't put on anybody else.
Yeah.
And just like
Agreed.
anybody else, they can't live up to it.
Yeah.
Secondarily, though, and I think this goes to the young people that you're meeting and talking about at Miami, is like, hey, lots more Christians are going to show up in Ernst and Young
In the
and
marketplace. Yeah.
P&G and
Yeah.
Kroger and the next startup in Silicon Valley and in Wall Street, or you name it, right?
Yeah.
In a mom and pop business in
Yeah.
Northern Kentucky, that's a second
Right.
generation firm that they're taking over. Like, lots more followers of Jesus are going to be in those spaces, and I think we need to elevate those as like, that's your seat for ministry,
Yeah.
that's your seat for influence. And
Yeah.
you don't have to be a pastor. I will tell you, some of the people who've taught me the most about scripture haven't been pastors.
Yeah.
They've been a business guy who had to figure out, okay, God, is this really true? Like, does this really work? Because I'm going to put these principles to work in my business.
Right.
And are they really going to work? And they've found them to work.
Yeah.
And they have stuff to teach me as a pastor. And so I think you're asking a good question there. I just would say, again, it goes back to the calling and assignment. Like, I
Yeah.
think it's possible that you could have seasons in both the
Yeah.
priestly ministry side of the church, but
Yeah.
also the kingly side of the church. And I think if we can celebrate all of that
Yeah.
as kingdom work, it gives people the freedom to be fully where they are and to see everything they do as ministry and as an
Yeah.
opportunity to represent Christ.
I really like that, Chuck. And I like one of the takeaways I would pull away from this is not just that in some seasons we might be called
Mm-hmm.
to one or the other. It could
Mm-hmm.
be for some of us, we're called specifically to one. I don't know
That's
if I ever
right.
told you
That's
this.
right.
I did a stint as an executive pastor.
Oh,
Did
I
I tell
didn't
you
know
this?
that.
I
No.
did for like about a year as a
Mm-hmm.
as a volunteer while I was working full time at P&G. That'll
Mm-hmm.
blow your
Mm-hmm.
mind, like with little
Right.
kids and all of that.
Right.
And I realized as I went through it, like this just isn't where I'm called.
Yeah.
I can do
Yeah.
it. I can
Yeah.
check the boxes, but
Mhm.
it's not where I'm called. It's not where
That's
I
good.
light up.
Yeah, that's
It's
good.
not the space that is really mine. And I
Yeah.
can also see for folks, you've lived this, where you can live out your calling in both arenas.
Yes.
And for other folks, their calling is purely to ministry, but it's God has
Hmm.
a unique path for each one of us.
He does.
And the
He
more we can
does.
lean into that calling and expressing it in different seasons, and don't worry about
Hmm.
the whether or not it's linear. I wish people
That's
would
right.
throw that everything has to be linear idea
Oh, we
out the
get into
door.
so
That's
much
the
trouble with
part.
that. And that's a
Yeah.
very Western way of viewing the world
You're
anyway,
right.
right? I mean,
Yeah.
like we're limited by the Western formation that we have,
Yeah.
which is very logical, linear, all of those things. And
Yes.
they're different forms of logic. And but I
Yeah.
think you're right. It's a hard thing. I am a linear person. I like routine. I like those
Yeah.
things. And
Yeah.
I wanted my life, if I got to choose it, I'd want it to be linear, like you said, up and to
Yeah.
the right. But I think there's so much richness and depth
Yeah.
in the breadth of experiences and in a little bit of those detours. Sometimes those detours are the best things.
They
Yeah,
are.
the stuff. I mean, I think about the things in life that I did not raise my hand and say, I'm going after this,
Yeah.
but it's come to me through whatever way it's come to me. And I think about
Yeah.
some of my best relationships have been that. Some of my
Yeah.
best experiences with my family have been that. And absolutely some of my best experiences in faith have been that too.
Yeah. I really hope that listeners will be courageous enough to let go of the linear
Yeah, that's good.
expectation that other people have and lean
Hmm.
into, hey, what does God have for you? What is he
Yeah.
forming and shaping in you? And how does he want to use you? And
Hmm.
what might it look like if you just lean into that and threw
Yeah.
that kind of expectation piece out the door? Well,
Amen. Amen.
before we close, Chuck, I'm wondering, there are probably some folks who are listening to your story and they're saying, well,
Hmm.
gosh, I'm feeling some restlessness about where I
Yeah.
am. And am I supposed to go move over here, move over there? Am I supposed to step back? Am I supposed to take some kind of a crazy leap and leave my corporate
Yeah.
world to go into ministry? Like, what would you encourage them not to rush past
Mm,
in this season of feeling that restlessness that you felt as recently as when you left
that's good.
Undivided and you said, I kind of felt this weird restlessness, like maybe this
Yeah.
isn't where I'm supposed to be. What should they not rush past?
Wow. I'm one of these people who does like an annual, you know, goal setting, reflect on the year that was, think about the year ahead. And I love the process. And the reason I love the process is because of the reflection. And
Yeah.
so I think that's what I hear you asking is like, what does the moment of reflection look like now? And I think there's a couple things. I think don't rush past the treasures and the gifts
Mm,
of the season or the assignment that you're in right now.
yeah.
Because even the hardest assignments come with some gifts. And the
Mm.
gift could be, you know what, baby? I look in the mirror and every day I made it.
Yeah, that's right.
I
I'm
did it.
still standing.
I'm still standing. That might be the
Yeah.
gift. That might be the
Yeah.
gift. There's probably some relationships that you're experiencing in this season or this assignment. And so just don't look past the gifts of the assignment. Here's the thing that I had to learn.
Mm,
Don't rush past grieving what you will
mm,
lose. And here, and
yeah.
this, and you know this to be true, even the best promotions, even the best next opportunities mean there's something that is being left behind.
Yeah.
And I regularly underestimate the impact of grieving those things.
Yeah.
And
That's
I'm
so
better
good.
served when I make time for grieving. You know what I mean? Like for me, it was like, okay, coming back to Crossroads, like Crossroads is growing. This is exciting. Boy, did I underestimate the impact of grieving. Oh man, I got to be a part of starting something new.
Yeah.
That was really cool. I'm really close to Troy, my co-founder, and we're not gonna have the same rhythms. Like people, when
Yeah.
people were traveling, they called us like an old married couple because like we always would go to a restaurant and we get two meals and we split the meals and like that was just our thing. And like we
Yeah.
were on the road together 50 days a year. We would do that all the
Yeah.
time. Now it's like it's funny. We went to Texas and we were together. I'm like, dude, we gotta do our thing because we don't get to do it
Yeah.
all the time. So
Yeah.
so even though it was like great opportunity, I'm excited for Troy. Like there's stuff to be grieved about. Man, our
Mm,
relationship's shifting. Like we don't have these 50 days sitting in all these airports talking to each other. Like that's
yeah.
different. So I think don't rush past the gifts, don't rush past the grief.
Mm,
And I would also say to the point of your next book, don't rush past the pause.
yeah.
Don't rush
Yeah.
past taking time to just sense God. Okay, I'm feeling unsettled. What are you doing here?
Yeah.
And giving yourself time and space and carving it out, like you said, making space to really spend that time with God to discern what it is that He wants to say to you. So those are
Yeah.
things I would say don't rush past.
I love that. And it's a such a positive way of looking at sometimes I feel like especially where the world is right now, there's so much
Hmm.
anger and
Yes.
there's so much frustration and we tend to focus on that.
Yeah.
And I hear you
Yeah.
saying, like, no, focus on the gifts and
Yeah.
things. Focus
There are
on the fact
gifts.
that the Lord is talking to you and wants to
Yeah.
talk to you and wants
Yes.
to be with you in this process. And I've
Yeah.
started asking folks who I know are looking for roles and feeling really frustrated, or folks who are in a job that they don't like, hey, what does it look like instead of asking God to fix this for you or asking God to
Hmm.
make this thing happen for you? What does it look like to stop and ask the Lord, show me what's good in this?
Amen.
Show me what you're forming
Amen.
in me in this.
Amen.
And I think
Amen.
that's such a otherwise it's like you get out of that job and go to the next one and you've probably missed an opportunity that
You're going to repeat some of those lessons if you don't learn them.
you sure are. You
Yeah.
sure are. I can't say I've never
Yeah.
repeated mistakes
You and me
before.
both. You and me
Yeah.
both, right? It's like,
Yeah.
oh, it turns
Yeah.
out it wasn't them. It was me. I'm the
Yeah,
problem.
right. I'm the problem.
I thought
What
it
is
was
the common
them.
denominator here? It's me. It's
Yes.
me. Shoot,
Yes.
I got some work to do. Well,
It's
Chuck,
so
this has
funny.
been so fun. I knew it would be.
Oh, I
I
enjoy
hope it
it.
was a gift to you because it's
It
always a
was
gift to me to
such a
talk
gift.
to you.
You are a gift. You are a
Well,
gift.
thank
And I just
you.
wanted to say how much I really am excited about what God is doing in you and through
Thank
you.
you.
And you are such a blessing to so many people. And so
Thank
it's
you.
it's a real gift.
Thank you. I'm honored to hear that and humbled to hear it. And I think I'm a product of a lot of what we talked about, like
Mm,
just getting to the point of saying, okay, Lord, I'm tired of doing the what everybody expects of me. I just want to do what you
that's
want
right.
me to do.
That's
And
right.
Boy,
That's
there's a
right.
lot of freedom in that, and there's a lot
It
of joy
really
in it.
is.
So, and
It
I can see
really
that on you
is.
too in this season. So, more of that for both
Amen.
of us for sure.
Amen.
Awesome. Well,
Amen.
thank you again, Chuck. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks, Ann.
See ya. What a great conversation with Chuck. Isn't he just so real in that conversation? I just really enjoyed that conversation. So, as always, I have a couple of key takeaways and a challenge for you. First key takeaway, I feel like that conversation about the difference between calling and season was really important. Like our calling is the through line. It's the thing that God wired us for. It's the desires that he put in our heart, the thing that lights us up, as Chuck said. But there might be different seasons that we go through, as Chuck has shown us in his career. And God doesn't waste any of those seasons as he's forming us more and more into the calling that he's designed for us. Second key takeaway, I loved when Chuck said, God is solid, but sometimes we're rigid. And this idea that, God's sovereignty and his plan and his consistency and his character, they never change, but we need to be moldable. We need to be changeable. We need to be formable as we go through our careers. And what a great observation from Chuck about that rigidity sometimes being a limiter to how we allow God to use us in the seasons they really allow him to lead us through. And then my third takeaway, there's so many other takeaways that we could have talked about in this particular podcast episode, but I loved the idea of Chuck said God wants to govern the pace of our careers. And I found that to be really insightful and such a good word picture for how God really wants to form us throughout our careers. That, what we might think of as delay oftentimes is God's protection. What might feel like a no or a not yet is God really forming our character into the calling that he has for us. Discernment doesn't happen quickly, friends. It comes with pause, with silence, with reflection, and we've got to be willing, we don't have to be, but we have an opportunity to be willing to move at the pace that God wants us to move at. So here's my invitation for this month, my challenge for this month. Instead of asking God to kind of come in and fix where you are or fix the problem that you are, whatever it is that's feeling unsettled for you right now, I really want you to pay attention to where you feel both resistance and life, and that trust even in that tension that God is at work in your career. He is moving you forward and he has goodness for you. And instead of asking God, fix this for me or make this work for me, how about if we stop and ask him, hey God, what are you forming here? What's good in this particular season about where I am, and where are you taking me? Well, I hope you've loved this episode. I loved this conversation with Chuck. You can always help us out by rating us, liking us, sharing us, giving us a review. And I can't wait to see you next time on the Faith Driven Leader podcast. I'll talk to you then.